Morning guys. So last night I got pretty busy in here. I didn't bring the camera, so I didn't actually film anything, but I'm going to show you what I did now. So over here you'll notice it all looks a little bit different again. Basically that relay turned up. You remember I was saying about the DPDT relay where I wanted to switch my solar panels between my charge controller and my grid tie inverter. Basically that relay turned up and it looked pretty good. I mean, maybe not quite as big as I hoped it would be, but I think it will be okay for the tests at least. Right, so I was trying to find a good way of setting this up. It was a bit of a nightmare because there's just so many wires now. So what I did was I actually used one of these boxes again, well, the same box as I used before. And you notice on here I've got my little trip switch. So this just turns on the panels. You'll have to excuse the cobweb of wires. But basically, here's the relay down here. And it's got like screw terminal connections. I don't know if you can see it very clearly, but basically it's got screw terminal connections. Tell you what, actually, I can actually just slip this out. That wasn't too good, just fell on top of the battery meter. Yeah, so I've just got a junction box in here. So your PV wires come in. One of them goes through, the positive goes through this switch here, which is the one that was on the outside, obviously. And then it basically just goes into this relay. Effectively, all I've done is just put on one side of the relay, PV power goes in. On one set of terminals coming out of the relay, it goes to the charge controller here, and then the other set go to the grid tie inverter via these two MC4 connectors. So it all looks quite nice actually. I quite like the way it's sort of come out. And then these white wires here, these basically turn on and off the relay. So normally the relay is in the position that sends the power from the panels straight to the solar charge controller, because that's how I want it in default mode. And then the clever bit is basically when the charger has actually charged the batteries up to about 95%, it will actually trigger this relay and flick it over to the grid tie inverter and then send any excess energy into the house rather than it just being wasted, or me just trying to find things in the shed to plug in, you know, and then not being able to manage to do it properly. It also means that I'm not actually missing out on any max power from this charge controller, because you remember the charge controller can only push out 300 watts and I've actually got 400 watts of panels. So basically the idea is that on a normal day with quite good sunshine, the batteries will be probably charged by sort of 11 or 12 o'clock. And then that is where the power is about 250 watts. And then it will flick over to the grid tie, and then you're going to be using sort of the 400 watt end of the day to actually go back into the house. So that's the theory anyway. I haven't tested it yet. This is the first day and it's not a very sunny day as usual in the UK. You might be thinking, what's the point of even having solar panels, because every time I show you a video it's actually a rubbish day. So this relay is actually rated at 230 volts, 10 amps. So I mean that's 2,300 watts. I'm not really sure the difference between the AC side and the DC side. I think the DC rating's lower, but it should be good for about 400 watts, which is all we're really pulling from these panels anyway. If it burns up, I'll just get a bigger one. Right, so you might notice this stray AC adapter. This is the 12 volt adapter for the relay. So I've actually unplugged that for now because I didn't want it doing anything overnight whilst I was messing around. So I'll plug that back in now. So that is going into the grid. This is the main power into the shed, the mains power, not the inverter power. So how have I done the bit where it goes 95% and then it flicks over to the grid tie? Well, what I've done, if you look under here, I've actually got two wires here which go to a relay on the battery meter. These battery meters have got relays which you can set to turn on or off on all different kind of settings, whether it's state of charge or voltage or all sorts of stuff. So it's really good for that. It's almost like a sort of BMS. All these wires do is just interrupt the current that's coming from the 12 volt power supply, so it can turn the relay on and off automatically by this. So when you set this up, and I'll show you that in a minute, you now get this little charge thing on the screen showing you need to charge the batteries, because I've actually set it up to trigger above 95%. So when the batteries reach 95%, the relay closes on here, turns the relay on in there, and then rediverts the power from the solar panels straight into that grid tie. And this grid tie isn't actually connected at the moment, because I've still got to do the wiring for that. Initially I thought that box was a little bit big just for a relay, but as it turns out you've got so many wires and so many things that you've got to kind of clamp down and stop from moving that you actually kind of do need quite a bit of space. Anyway, I'll show you what I did for the setup on the battery meter. So I'll do it on the phone this time. Let's move that out of the way because of the light. So there's the smart BMV. Wait for it to open up. So right now you can see the relay is open, battery percentage is 66%. So if we go into relay, so you've got low state of charge relay there, 90% and 95%. So if you go into this low state of charge relay, it says when the state of charge percentage is between the set and clear value, the relay will be closed. So basically, if it's between 90 and 95%, the relay will be closed. Now I've actually inverted the relay just to confuse things more, because I'd rather the relay be off the majority of the time than on the majority of the time, because obviously, you know, you're putting load on the coil of the relay all the time to hold it there. So then if you hit that invert relay thing, which just basically triggers the relay, I'll show you what happens. There you go. And the grid tie inverter will come on. Obviously that power's not going anywhere at the moment. So if we turn that back off, then that will stay on for a little while because of the capacitors inside, but then you can see the current starting to climb up on the charge from the charge controller there. When the state of charge percentage is between the set and clear value, the relay will be closed. Really, I want it triggering when the battery gets low, obviously at 90%. But I have inverted the relay. Oh, I don't know. Right, guys, come with me on this journey as I try and work out what I'm doing. So basically, look, if we hit 90%, the relay closes. I've inverted it, so effectively the relay is open, which means the power goes to the solar charge controller. It'll carry on going to the charge controller until it hits 95%. Is that right? When it reaches that 95%, the relay opens. In my case, it closes because I've inverted it, and then that will send power to the grid tie inverter. So basically, it's impossible to go higher than 95%, because obviously, you know, you're going to be charged when it hits 95%. It will trigger to go onto the grid tie inverter. What's probably annoying is around this area. This is where the absorption charge happens, which takes ages. So I might have to bring these numbers down further to actually get it to work. Right guys, it's a bit later in the day now, excuse my hair, got hat hair. I've noticed that the solar charge controller was going to float. I've had this problem before, it sort of hits float and then the power is obviously going down. I need to adjust the settings for this as well. I think I said this before in another video, but something isn't quite right. So let's have a look at the settings on here. So 14.2 volts, that doesn't sound too wrong. 3.6 volts fully charged, these cells normally are, times 4, it's 14.4, so 14.2, keeping it a little bit lower, that should be fine. But the float voltage is 13.5, I don't know why that's down there. I don't know if I set that myself or whether that's, I think we're on a preset here as well. It doesn't matter about that, you can just edit these. So I may just increase this up to like 14 volts or something, because it's hitting that float charge and then reducing the current, which is just, that's not what I want. I want to get maximum current into as higher percentage state of charge as possible, and ideally I don't really want any float. I just realised as well my heater was on whilst I was trying to do the video, and the noise of that. Now we've got a plane going over. Well, as I was saying, it's getting towards the end of the day now, and actually the sun's sort of come out, so we've got a fair bit in today. I just want to see this flick over. Well, I've just turned everything off, so it gives it a good chance of getting this charged up. 5.8 amps going in, which isn't bad at about 6 o'clock. Right guys, it's the next day, and look what's happening over here. We've got a light on the grid tie, which obviously means it's tripped over. So last night, I think when the sun went down, it kind of hit about, I don't know, like 90% or something like that. So it wasn't going to trigger the 95% where the relay would come in. And then, yeah, so obviously today it's hit 95%, and then this has gone over to the grid tie. Unfortunately, I haven't got the grid tie connected, so this power's going nowhere at the moment. But what's obviously happening here is the batteries are discharging slowly, because this would have hit 95%, and then kind of like fallen back from there. It's only stuff like the Raspberry Pi and stuff that's kind of on this at the moment. The inverter's turned off at the moment because I haven't been in it. But yeah, I think it might be working. So the reason why I haven't plugged this in, I mean, it's easy to do. All I've got to do is basically just plug it in. But I've got a very long extension lead which I was using to run it outside when I had the grid tie converter outside, which is just currently in here in the dry. But the main reason for hanging around is because I've actually got one of those energy meters, like the Victron energy meters, which actually is a bit like it looks a bit like a breaker. It goes actually supposed to go into like a consumer unit, and then it effectively measures energy. So you can actually use it to measure PV energy straight off the grid tie converter. So I keep saying grid tie converter, what I mean is inverter. But yeah, anyway, that's supposed to be turning up today. I think it's going to be later today, which is a bit of a pain. But the idea obviously with that is it means I'll be able to monitor the output of the grid tie inverter going into the house, and I can do that by the control panel, which is running on obviously on the Raspberry Pi. So I've just set this to watts. I'm going to unplug the relay, and then you should see things flick across, and then this should start climbing as the power goes into the charge controller. See that light's on now, that light just turned off. So it's a seriously low amount of power at the moment. It's another one of those really grey English days. Look at that, it's even a bit misty. I'll do another little test. I'm going to turn the inverter on. So turn that on. And that's my little stove firing up as well, because it's on the same circuit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on this heater, because that will draw a bit of power out of these batteries. And then that will drop the percentage down. See, 40 something amps going out there. So the idea with this is to basically see if we can drop down the percentage and see if the relay clicks the other way. Shouldn't take long. 500 watts pulling out of this shouldn't take long to get that down to 90%. It's on 93 at the moment. And that little heater is going to get nice and warm. It's not actually going down as quick as you'd think it would. These batteries are so big in capacity, 190 amp hour batteries or whatever. So yeah, it's going to take a little while for that to drop down. I haven't checked under here for a while, but the balancer looks like it's doing something. It's just that top bank of cells that's a little bit higher. Those top two, I've got them split into two banks and monitor them on the battery meter. But yeah, it's just that top two that are a little higher. I've actually got another cell here to swap into that, and just to see if that makes any difference. I'm not sure. Still going down, guys. Right, we're getting there. This takes a little while to actually register. Now we're getting the charge thing come up, which is a good sign. So there you go. That's the relay clicking out. So you should see that light on that grid tie just go off. You can already see the one on the charge controller on. Happy with that then, that's really good. I've just turned the heater off because I obviously want to stick a bit of charge in here. But that's really good. The only thing I might do is tweak this so that it doesn't go up to as high as 95%. The reason is at 95%, the cell voltages, individual cell voltages, seem to go a bit wayward. That top bank seems to fly off into the distance somewhere and get a little bit too high. So I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably change it to like 90% and 85%. And then that way I've still got bags of energy left in the batteries. 85%. So there you go. It messes with that time to go meter as well, because you can see here it's saying I've got no time to go, when actually I have, but because 90% is deemed as basically the lowest point you want to go to, so that is a bit of a compromise. You might be able to do this better with voltage, but I just don't know. Right, so we've still got 17 watts going out, so I think what I'll do is I'll turn off the workshop. It's getting increasingly harder to do that now with all that behind there. So we've got a meager 21 watts going in, which ain't really going to do too much, is it? 1.5 amps. So that's now got to go up to 95% before that grid tie comes back on. So that works, guys. If you need a solution for switching between a grid tie and a solar charge controller, that works with two panels anyway. If you've got more than that, then you're not going to be able to run them through that relay. But I don't know. It's a way of doing it. Right, I've wired up the grid tie, so I've got this wire just coming out of here, going back to where it used to go, just down into that power meter down there. I just want to test if that works. So I've got my mains charger on. I'm just trying to ram in a bit of power so that this goes back up to. I've changed this now to 92%. So now we've got 92% and 87%. So when this hits 92%, relay will click, turns that off, turns that on, and then that just carries on going. And then when this drops back down to 87%, this will come on, that will go off, and that'll be that. It's all this stuff, it just makes me a little bit nervous because you've got all these different wires in all different places, and you kind of, what's on my mind is there some way, you know, power can get back through another way, or, you know, is there something I haven't thought about here? But I don't think there is, because the relay's isolating everything. The relay's isolating the power coming in from the panels. It's either going to go two ways. It's either going to go to the charge controller or the other way. So the two systems aren't connected at all. The only thought is, how isolated is that to this end? It must be properly isolated, otherwise it wouldn't work, would it? We'll soon find out if this place just goes up in smoke. Here we go. There you go, it's doing its MPPT. Just found the MPPT. And we should see a bit of power going back in. Right guys, the courier turned up and brought this. And I don't think it's what I was expecting. Lithium ion batteries. Gone are the days when you could ship lithium batteries easily. It's all got to be done in this proper way now. So in here we've got boosted boards, extended range battery. I mean, that is a beast. So the kind of mini story behind this, guys, when you ordered a boosted board like 2 years ago when the V2 first came out, they couldn't ship the large batteries for some reason. I don't think they had them ready. So they said what you can do is you can actually reserve a higher capacity battery for like a lower price or something. And I just did that because I just thought, well, why not? So it's only been 2 years roughly for this to finally turn up. I don't know about other people, but I think at the moment it's kind of gone really. But yeah, it certainly looks interesting. It's supposed to be double the capacity of, no, more than double. I think the other one was a 100 watt hour battery. This is a 257. But I mean, that is a substantial brick of energy. It's probably going to be another video, but let's just see how charged it is. Yeah, see, they can only charge it probably halfway for the 100 watt hour limit on batteries. Also guys, I've picked up one of these. So just a normal sort of consumer unit. The idea is I'm going to use this to put the grid tie inverter, you know, into the system properly, rather than using the dodgy 3-pin plug. So hopefully my Victron energy meter can just go in here and then it'll be all nice and tidy in that box. Right guys, the energy meter has turned up in this box. Doesn't look like a Victron box, but it's actually made by Carlo Gavazzi or whatever. So yeah, this is it. This is the meter. So basically you get this and this probably overpriced RS485 USB connector. So this plugs into the Raspberry Pi or the Venus, whatever you're running, and then these wires have to be spliced into these terminals here. So that should go straight into there. Well, I just had a moment here where this isn't actually kind of lining up here with the bus bar, but of course you're not using the bus bar, are you? That's the reason why they've done that, so that it doesn't, so you don't connect this to it, because this is the neutral side here. So yeah, here's the diagram. So basically you've got to run a neutral from here to there, and then your live is going to come out of there and go under there to that, and then your input is going to be coming in from there. So that's what you got to do. I figured it out guys, it's the next day. So I've got it all up and running, sort of like in a kind of test mode at the moment. Lots of flashing lights going on. So yeah, fairly straightforward. It's easy to wire when you're sort of wiring up in these proper sort of consumer units. But I've just got this down here now for now, because I'm going to actually screw that to the wall, probably up there with the other one. And then just run the wires down. The only thing is, I don't know whether this is the RS485 lead. Now these you have to screw in. You see these little terminal blocks here, you have to screw those in. It's like a USB lead. One side goes in the Pi, and then the other side goes into this little meter. And then, here's the cool bit, it comes through onto here. So immediately, as soon as you connect it, it just appears. But when you first set it up, it actually just appears as like a sort of AC meter. So you actually have to go into the settings down here and then go into, oh, trying to do this again with the, someone's at my front door. You never miss a trick with that doorbell. So what was I saying? So yeah, you have to go into settings and then you actually have to go into, just keep going down, energy meters, that one there. So the energy meter's there, and you can see I've got it set roll, I've got it set to PV inverter, and you can actually change that. So you can have it as a grid meter or on your gen set or whatever you've got, and you can actually configure the position of it. Now that is relevant for if you go into exit out of that. So this is really cool because it now appears on that sort of main screen. So we're slowly filling up all the boxes on this. But yeah, you can see anyway, not much power coming. I was worried that was going to show a minus because there was a lot of reports online about people saying you had to connect it the other way around if it's measuring power going the other way. But I think they must have adjusted the software or something because it all kind of works. So that's pretty cool, guys. Now I can monitor everything coming in from that grid tie inverter, and it's not like an expensive one with monitoring system and all that. It's just like a cheap inverter from Eco, wherever. So I'm not sure exactly how the energy monitoring thing kind of works on this, how it actually accumulates, because you've got two here. You've got energy. That's obviously, this is if you're running 3 phases. Live 1, that's the one we've got it connected to. That'll obviously increase, and I don't know, is that the lifetime total? I presume that's probably like the lifetime total. I don't know what that is, maybe since last reset or something. So this is what I was wondering, like what can you do with this data? There doesn't seem to be, I don't know, maybe there's a way of like, kind of getting this on a graph or something like that if you wanted to, but I don't think there is. Maybe something in the VRM portal for the thing that this system actually sends to, like a Victron's cloud server. You can monitor everything on there. I haven't seen anything on there that kind of would draw like a graph over time of what's coming in, but it's good though because it ties everything together. Obviously a lot of these inverters, these grid tie inverters, have got their own monitoring things. I think this one even does, but it's just a bit of a nightmare to work out how to use. I think you can't get the modem easily. I think this particular inverter does it by 433 megahertz. It sends the signal over there, and then something's got to receive that and then do something with that data. But I was actually playing around and I got my SDR, the software defined radio USB stick out to see if I could actually pick up anything from that inverter, but nothing was coming out of that, so no luck on that, guys. I think maybe, you know, the little box that goes with this inverter might have to kind of initialize a data transfer to get it to come out. But anyway, I'm not worried about that too much. So the next step is to get that all closed up and then actually kind of wired into there, and then somehow sort of work out where the wires are going to go for that. Should be pretty straightforward. You don't get much of a cable on this inverter, so you know it might have to go a little bit closer. Boom! It's the next day. Not the next day. It's probably about 3 days later actually, because I've had so much on. It's just been just crazy. So guys, to wrap up this one, I'm going to show you what I've done so far. It's pretty much finished, but well, for now anyway. This stage of it. So over here, I've actually put the box that I got obviously for the meter. I've put that in there, so this is all wired in nicely, and this acts as kind of like a double safety switch because you've got this main breaker here which turns off everything. Well, effectively turns off the connection between the mains and this grid tie inverter here, and then in here I've actually got, let me just move that over that bottle there, so you can see this breaker here on the left which is on. That actually just makes this whole area live on this panel, so it's effectively, you can see my nice wire that goes around there and in the bottom. So it's all installed and working, and so far so good. This has been tested now for a couple of days, so it all seems to be working well, guys. When it gets to 95%, the battery, that is, when the battery gets to 95%, it flicks over from the solar charge controller to the grid tie, and then feeds that excess power back into the house, obviously. So you can see at the moment the solar charge controller is actually active. That's because the batteries are dipped down a little bit lower, mainly because I'm charging these two, the lawnmower battery and the drill battery, so that's kind of happened. But it like seamlessly just switches between the two, which is just amazing. And I've actually found out now that on the Victron control panel you can actually see the total solar yield, whether it's coming from the grid tie, which is obviously not a Victron product, but you can still measure it because you've got the meter up there, and obviously the solar charge controller. So I'll show you that, but you can see, it's awesome. You can just see like a total yield, whether it's going into the grid tie or whether it's going into the battery, so that's fantastic. But for some reason, the only thing you can't see on the actual web page is the total yield of the system. Even though it's recording it, it hasn't got anywhere that actually displays the total energy that you've brought in. But you can see the total energy of the grid tie. So, I mean, you can easily just work it out, but it'd be nice to just have an area there where you can actually just see, you know, everything in one hit. So it kind of brings this video to a close, guys, but immediately I'm thinking I want to do something better with this kind of box here, because, I mean, it's fine, but I can probably make this a little bit more neater, smaller, more compact and more professional. So what I'm probably going to do is get an empty one of these with just a DIN rail inside, basically just an empty box, and then I can actually put the relay, because the relay is actually like a DIN mountable thing, and obviously this breaker is as well. So I can kind of have it so it's up here with the other lot. So you've got like a low powered DC input from the solar panels coming in up here, and then the relay and everything's in there, and it's kind of in one kind of enclosed metal box rather than this plastic thing here. And then I think what I'll do, because obviously I'll be getting more panels, it's going to happen, I'm going to put like a combiner box outside, so that your panels, basically you can just add panels to the bottom. EcoWorthy do a really good PV combiner box. It's actually got like MC4 connectors on the bottom, and it's waterproof. So if I mount that on the side of the house, I can then just have, you know, just add panels as they kind of become available, or strings of panels as I get them, and then it all just feeds into here. Obviously I won't be able to run loads of panels through this little relay here, but I'll worry about that when I come to it. If worst comes to worst, I can just run another couple of wires from the combiner box coming into here, so you know, things have their own separate feeds eventually, but right now we're sharing 2 panels with the entire thing. Anyway guys, I hope you found this video useful. If you have, give it a like, also subscribe, message me, send comments, all that sort of stuff. I'll try and reply to most of them, but it's getting a bit crazy now, so I might not be able to reply to all of them. Anyway guys, catch you in the next video. Right guys, I just added that into the end of the video. I thought you might like to see it switch over, and it's a bit later now, even more, so we're getting 314 watts going in, which is pretty good. Anyway, that's it for now. Catch you later.